On today's Patriot Nation podcast, we have our fantasy football special. We're going to be joined by Dale DeMont from Eat Sleep Fantasy and from Austin Thompson, also of Eat Sleep Fantasy. It's going to be a heck of a show, so buckle up and cue the music. All right, gentlemen, we are here, and it's Tuesday night, which is pretty exciting. We got the fantasy football special. We're being joined today by two guys from Eat Sleep Fantasy, and Spags and Keegan. I know, we're all excited for this because we got to get some fantasy. We got to get some fantasy knowledge up in here, greater than the two of us. So the three of us, I should say. I will intro these two guys, have them talk about themselves, just introduce themselves a little bit to the listeners out there. I know Dale's been on the show a few times. He's been on kind of every year when we do this, and Austin's a newcomer here, and we appreciate him coming. So, Dale, let's start with you. Just kind of tell the audience, just a little bit, not too much. We don't want too much detail, but a little bit about yourself.
I'm a little nervous because I don't go live too often, so now you kind of put me on the spot. I didn't know we were going live until right when you said, all right, we're going live. So I'm a little nervous. But Eat Sleep Fantasy, eatsleepfantasy.com, Eat Sleep FF on Twitter. We've been doing a fantasy football podcast since 2016. And Pat's been a longtime listener and supporter of the podcast. And like he said, I've been on here, I think since 2016.
I think maybe 17 was the first year I did one.
Yeah, that would make sense because we started in 16. So I don't know. I'm happy to chat fantasy. I love podcasting, love fantasy sports. So let's do it.
It's good stuff. Austin, welcome, man. Appreciate you coming on, buddy.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell people, just a quick snippet of you.
So I've been playing fantasy for about 10 years, and I became a fan of Dale and Eat Sleep Fantasy, and then I emailed him and asked if I could write for him, and he said yes, and the rest is history.
Well, there you go. Look at that.
It's a really hard application process.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went.
I mean, let's put it this way. I'm contributing over there right now. So, it's not hard. You just hey, can I do this? Yeah, sure. Okay. Sure. Why not? Give it a shot. Let's see what happens. So if they don't like it, they can always just let us go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be my strategy. My Tinder strategy. Just accept everybody. And then you can always say no later. You know what I mean? If things don't work out. So, not that I've ever been on Tinder, but nevertheless. Spags, Keegan, what's up, fellas?
Doing well. I know this is your favorite show of the year, Pat. You're always giddy to get on here. I mean, you're in 25 leagues, so you got your chances of winning at least one are pretty good.
That's it. See?
It's informative for me. We had to usually my league I've been doing with 10 buddies or 9 other buddies. We usually draft toward, at the end of the preseason, but a couple of guys going on vacation. We had to squeeze it in last Friday. Obviously been some injuries, so I wish we did this last week, but I'm looking forward to maybe saying, hey, I got that guy, and you give your opinion, and then obviously the waiver wire guys. So appreciate you guys coming on. It's always fun talking to you guys over there.
For sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. So I'm the guy that knows nothing about fantasy football. I beat my family league a couple years ago, and then they didn't invite me back, so I was out of the game last year. And then Pat coerced me into his league this year, or one of his many leagues this year. So this is a good opportunity for me to get back in the swing of things. I feel like I'm 2 generations of players back, so this should be fun.
Yeah, I always feel that way, coming out of the summer, especially, I don't pay attention a lot to, the incoming college players and the rookies and stuff. And then it takes me a month to really get into it. So I think we all kind of feel behind as we, start the season up.
Yeah. We don't have that problem here, luckily. Keegan spends a lot of time, and Spags spend a ton of time on
all
the
I know.
So the rookies, they're good with,
Dwayne Eskridge, sleeper.
Yeah, there you go.
But so I just want to, just before we get it, we're going to do, just so people know, we're going to do a mock draft and kind of talk about a bunch of different players. I think a mock draft is good because we can go through and talk about players as they're kind of coming up, and then we can make decisions to talk about drafting strategies and whatnot. But before we do that, I just want to chat just about a few different kinds of fantasy football leagues. So everyone knows, the standard leagues, ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, which some people may or may not know, but there's so many different leagues out there. You got best ball leagues, you got dynasty leagues, you got redraft leagues, you got keeper leagues, and then you can do drafts where you do slow drafts or live drafts or auction drafts. So there's so many different ways to play fantasy football, and I think that's my favorite part about it is just it's accessible for everyone, and you can do it in a different way, kind of for everyone. I just think that's the coolest part for me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it like just exactly what you said. I mean, it has something for everybody. You can do a 8-team redraft league with your office, or you can do a 16-team dynasty league that you've been doing with your buddies for 20 years. I mean, and there's so much in between, right? I mean, like you said, auction leagues, the dynasty leagues. There's even guillotine leagues that I love playing. I know, Pat, you played in one last year in Austin. And those are really fun. I mean, there's just so many, best ball, set it and forget it. So yeah, I mean, that's the best part about fantasy. You could find, even if you like football, you can find something that you enjoy playing with fantasy football.
Yeah, guillotine leagues are fun until Dale convinces you to join one and you lose week 1.
Yeah, that suck.
Which I'm pretty sure that's what I did last year. So
yeah,
I think I was gone.
Yeah, I'm a huge redraft fan. I love redraft. I've got a couple of dynasty leagues that I'm in. That's been like the last 2 years, but I mean, 10 years ago it started off with redraft, and I live for it every year.
Me too.
Interesting. Yeah. So just so people know, if people are out there haven't heard, but best ball essentially is you draft a team and then you don't worry about who to start. It's just like, okay, there are slots, quarterback slot, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. Let's just say you draft those players. You just have your roster. You can't drop anyone. You can't trade anyone. That's just your team. And then they go through and automatically pick the highest scorers for you at each position every week. It's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. The dynasty, obviously, you just kind of continue. You kind of work your way through the dynasty. It's almost like you're the GM of a football team, which I think is cool. And an auction draft, we're gonna start the mock in a second here, but we're gonna do a regular draft, a regular snake draft, right? 1 through 10, or we're gonna do 12, 1 through 12, and then 12 through 1, and so on and so forth. But an auction draft, I do an auction draft in my home league. We just do a redraft auction, but because you have an availability to get every single player, right? If you're doing a redraft and you have pick 10, you're not getting Christian McCaffrey. You're guaranteed to not get Christian McCaffrey. There's no chance you're going to get him. But if you're doing a dynasty draft, if you're doing an auction draft, and that's the guy you want, you can get him. Now, you might have to pay for him. You're going to have to pay something for him, right? But you can get anyone you want, and that makes it fun. And then the other part of it for me is that you're in on every single pick. Like, you're not like, oh, who's this person going to draft? It's like, no, that person got nominated. How much? Okay, I would want that guy. How much am I going to pay? Oh, is it worth it? Like, so man, my heart races during auction drafts. It's a lot of fun. So, I mean, it's a little bit, and some people hate it and some people like it, but like Austin said, there's something for everyone, which I think is cool. And so,
in theory, auction leagues are amazing. I can't get into them, man. There's too many variables.
Yeah.
Your plan goes out the window immediately.
Oh yeah.
Like the first player that that you bid on, man, they're good. Like, you're like, oh, I'm not going to get Christian McCaffrey, and then you're like, well, $40 is pretty good, and then before you know it, you're way over budget, and then the rest of your draft sucks.
Right.
So,
well, that's
but if you like it, I mean, like you said, you get the players that you want. You have an opportunity to get everybody you want. So
right, exactly. That's what I like about it. That's one of my favorite things about it. So, anyways, all right. So let's fire up the mock draft machine here. We're gonna mock, and so hold on. Let me hit the share screen here. All right, nope. Here we go. I'm gonna do a tab. We're gonna do the simulator. Okay. So I'm not sure how it's gonna look. I know you guys were saying you have a hard time seeing it. Hopefully, people that are out there can see it. But we're gonna do half PPR. Obviously, just a 2021 season, not a dynasty league. Snake draft, and I'm going to draft out of what position do you want to draft out of? Keegan, I'll let you choose. What position do you want to draft out of? No, you're muted. You got to unmute.
That's Spag's fault. I just want to let everybody know he muted me. We'll go 5th, just top of the head.
Right. Let's do it. I like it. All right, so we're going to draft 5th. We're going to draft out of the 5 spot, and we're just going to do, again, just a straight up mock draft. So here we go. All right, and so I want to just kind of chat about strategy here, but everyone, people talk about zero RB strategy. People talk about different types of strategies that you can use. Do you have like one specific strategy, Dale, that you use, or do you just kind of go on the fly and kind of do what you got to do?
I pretty much go on the fly, man. I mean, you hear, the buzzword is, value-based drafting, and that's really what I do. More than likely, as I'm drafting, I like to keep a more balanced roster. I don't, people talk about zero running back or, whatever, running back heavy teams, early quarterbacks. I just like to take what's best value, what I feel like is best value at the time, and keep it balanced. So if I start off with 2 running backs because 2 great running backs fell to me, then, I start really looking at it, and more than likely I won't get a 3rd or 4th running back in a row. So I like to keep really balanced for me personally.
All right. And same thing with you, Austin, or do you have a specific thing you try to go into it with, or is it just kind of?
I like to pick 1 or 2 guys that I really want, and those are just my guys. Like whatever I got to do to get them, nothing crazy like picking a kicker in the first round. But if there's a running back or a receiver that I really want, especially if I know I'm picking further towards the end of the round and I know I can't get certain guys, I'm like, okay, these guys are who I'm going to get this year.
Makes sense. Okay. I like that. So we're drafting here at 5. First 4 picks, I think made sense. You get McCaffrey, Dalvin, and then Kamara. I'm a little surprised with Zeke at 4. I don't know if you guys are as high on Zeke at 4, but I feel like Zeke at 4 is a little bit high for me.
Yeah, me too.
So, but again, it's kind of an opinion here. I think running back, if you're drafting in the top 5, to me, you kind of have to take a running back unless you're drafting in a multiple quarterback league. I just feel like drafting a wide receiver at 5th overall, I know Devontae Adams could have a massive year, but I just don't think you're getting enough value there.
I agree.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, if you can get Derrick Henry in the 5th spot, 100%.
Yeah.
There's no question.
So I agree. So let's do that. By the way, Clayton says that Dale wants to draft Melvin Gordon right here, but we're going to pass on Melvin Gordon and go with Derrick Henry. Okay. So let's see here. This is like going really slow for me. I don't know why. All right. So we picked Henry with the 5th pick. Then Tyreek. Najee went 7th overall.
That's crazy.
That's wild. But I mean, like the value of Najee Harris has gone all over the place. I'm curious about your thoughts there, guys.
So
Najee Harris, what's your opinion there?
Look, and this is kind of what Austin was saying. If you have the 7th pick and you really, really want Najee Harris, if you're a big Steelers fan or you watched him in Alabama and you believe in this guy and it's your 7th pick, there's no way you're going to come back around and get him. He's going to be taken in the next 8 picks or whatever. So, if you want him, you got to get him then. And that's exactly what Austin was saying. Like if he's your guy and that's who you want to root for and, it makes your fantasy league, fantasy experience better, I say go for it.
There you go.
There's better value, I think, but hey, if I know it's just a computer drafting, but if you really like Najee, I'd say go for it.
I'd just like to say here, I know that it's just fantasy pros just making up random things, but Najee in a bottle is drafting 6th overall, and they took Tyreek Hill over Najee Harris. I just like, if you're going to name your team Najee in a bottle, which is a dope name, by the way, if you're going to name your team Najee in a bottle, you have to draft Najee Harris in the first round.
Totally.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Stupid robot.
But anyway, so few names going there. Chubb, Barkley, like nobody, to me, you hear through the first 2 rounds, Ridley going at the end of the first round over Devontae Adams, although this person took Ridley and then Devontae Adams, which is pretty solid. Jonathan Taylor, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Kelsey, Gibson, and Hopkins. Okay, here's a thought about Kelsey. How early are you taking Travis Kelsey? Because some people were taking Travis Kelsey. You saw it early here in the 2nd round. Are you taking Travis Kelsey in the 2nd round? Or are you waiting on tight end a little bit? Because the argument here, of course, is position scarcity, right? There's just not a lot of tight ends that are going to put up a lot of numbers, right? He stays healthy. George Kittle doesn't necessarily stay healthy. He's going to put up numbers too, but how early are you drafting Travis Kelsey? Because, 2.5 seems pretty early to me.
Yeah, 2.5 is really early to me. You could see him going like the late 2nd usually, but I'd much rather have, and talking about value again, I'd much rather wait for Kittle, which is probably going to be 2 tight end picks after, maybe, late second late second, early third. Waller will get picked, and then maybe mid third to late third. I bet you Kittle gets picked. So if you're looking at that, I think the value there is going a little bit stronger player and skipping Kelsey that time and going to get Kittle around later.
I'm curious what you guys think on wide receivers, because obviously I tend to draft heavy wide receivers, and obviously they seem to go pretty, from what I can see here, they went pretty early, obviously Devontae and Tyreek. Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at wide receivers, like typically what I like to do is, and obviously that goes with being a good wide receiver, right? But I like to draft the best route runners, right? Because I think those guys are going to be open more times than not, right? The Devontae Adams, the Calvin Ridleys, the Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, right? Justin Jefferson, guys like that. And obviously all the elite wide receivers are good route runners, but I think there's obviously different styles. Like I don't think DK Metcalf is a precise guy who's going to be really quick in and out of his breaks. I'd rather a guy like a Tyreek Hill or like I said, a Calvin Ridley that's going to get a lot more volume because they're going to be open a lot more.
See, I think that DK Metcalf is the outlier in that situation. I just feel like you've got a 1-2 situation with him and Lockett, and it just feels like there's something between him and Russ. But normally I'm kind of up there with you. I've never been I'm not currently a big Julio Jones guy, but I like to go for the guys that I think will get the most targets, but I don't like to go for guys I think will get double teamed constantly, if that makes any sense.
Right. I think it does. I think that makes a lot of sense to have another guy that takes coverage away. DK is a perfect example of that. Like you can't just single cover Tyler Lockett either. Like Lockett's going to kill you as well.
Yeah.
And so you have to pay attention to both of them, but it's not like you just have one guy. And so, I think we're at an interesting spot here at the 2-8. So this is the 2-8 spot. A lot of wide receivers are already on. Hopkins, AJ Brown, Diggs, Adams, Ridley, Tyreek Hill. Those guys are all gone. Running backs, a ton of running backs have gone. The top running back here is Joe Mixon, which I don't know. Joe Mixon seems to be a very polarizing player. I personally am not drafting Joe Mixon at 2-8. Now that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve there. It doesn't mean he's not going to put up numbers this year. I just feel like it's too early for Joe Mixon, just because he just hasn't done it for so many years in a row. It's just so frustrating. Yeah. And so, we're looking at, so just to give people who aren't live here, just an example here. So we're looking at the top running backs they have are Joe Mixon, CEH from Kansas City, and J.K. Dobbins from Baltimore. Top wide receivers they have are DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, and Keenan Allen. And then tight ends, of course, are Waller, Kittle, and then Mark Andrews. What are we doing here? What do you guys want to do here? I guess I'll put it out there as to what you want to do.
I'll tell you what I think, and you guys, I don't know. I know there's going to be some disagreement here. Dark blue gold I see on the chat just asked, will Kittle finally have a big year? I think so. But so this is kind of like the weird island of players that I don't particularly like. I don't believe in Joe Mixon. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of let's just say a dart throw at this point. We're not really sure what we're going to get from him. Although, I do like him, and I think this is pretty decent value. J.K. Dobbins, I'm not sold on. The wide receivers, they're all decent, but there's no superstar wide receiver either. And I feel like we could take a wide receiver in a couple rounds, guys like Robert Woods, stuff like that's going to be available in another round or two. So this is a time. I'm not a big tight end guy. I don't like to take tight ends early, but when you have these players kind of on this weird island, I start considering guys like Darren Waller, or if Kittle was still there. Kelsey was still there,
right?
So if it were up to me, I'm not a big tight end guy. I know a lot of people like to wait on tight ends, but I think Darren Waller is a choice for me.
Now, I like to hear that because I just kept him in the 8th round in my league, so I appreciate that.
I like it.
If I was going to go receiver, I would go Justin Jefferson. But I think sitting where we're at right now, I kind of lean Dobbins, and it's only for the reason that you're going to have COVID issues with Lamar Jackson all season long. As it currently looks. It currently looks like like he's going to potentially be a player much like Cam Newton that will be affected more by COVID than some other players will be. And with that being said, whoever they have back there is going to have to rely on J.K. Dobbins, in my opinion.
Interesting.
It makes sense. I think Dobbins and CEH are guys that I would consider in this spot. Wide receiver, like I'm with you, Dale. Like I just feel like it's early for wide receiver. I like DK, but like if you're gonna give me AJ Brown, if you're gonna give me Stephon Diggs, I mean Devontae Adams, for God's sakes, like if you're gonna give me someone like that, like absolutely. But like I just don't know if DK or even Justin Jefferson gives me enough, because now Jefferson, you got to remember now, Jefferson's gonna be getting double teamed. Whereas I don't know how much of that he saw last year. He was still a rookie, right? So now he's a second-year guy, and Thielen's on the other side, so you can't really double as much, but like maybe now you rotate over for Jefferson instead of for Thielen. And so now he's the one that's being game planned against this year as opposed to Adam Thielen. So, and again, that may not happen, but like I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to take him. Listen, okay, Keegan, we're going to you, Keegan. I'm going to let you be the tiebreaker here. We have one vote for Darren Waller. We have one vote for J.K. Dobbins. Who are you picking?
Yeah, so I'm a big Waller guy, just for the fact that he's going to get probably, I don't know, twice as many touches as not touches, but targets as a guy like J.K. Dobbins, and he's going to command so much more of the offense than J.K. Dobbins will. So, I mean, he's a safety blanket, and especially, is this PPR or half?
Half.
Right. So either way,
but
right?
Still.
Like, he's going to get 10, maybe 12 targets a game. He's going to come down with like 90% of them. I think he's just such a huge part of that offense. And especially with Derek Carr, he's in a year where he kind of has to limit his mistakes a little bit. That's what's held them back. And who's he gonna trust most? It's Darren Waller. It's his safety blanket. So I think it's a good pick. I think he's going to be a more consistent player than Dobbins would be.
I like it. Because you got to remember, too, at the end of the day, I think the first rushing option in Baltimore is still going to be Lamar Jackson, right? So, like, But let's see. And then you never know. Dobbins might come back to us in the third round. You never know.
And that's a good thing about, I say it, we mock on our podcast a lot. And, now's the time to see just what happens, pick a tight end, just see what your team looks like and learn from it. Sometimes, I've definitely gotten Kelsey in the second round before and mocking, and, you see how your team looks and then you adjust. I mean, that's what the fun of mock draft is.
Yep, exactly. All right. So after our pick went Mixon, CEH, Mahomes, Dobbins, and then DK, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson. So Allen Robinson's the guy that, I mean, I know he's kind of QB proof, but man, he scares the crap out of me. Like, he just scares the crap out of me this year. So, and Dark Blue Gold says, that he loves the Herbert Allen connection. Like, I agree 100%. Like, I think Keenan Allen's a guy I just feel like is overlooked every year. Like, he's just like consistently good every single year. He got drafted really high in this draft.
Top route runner.
But I feel like he's not getting drafted in the third round in a lot of drafts. I feel like he's dropping to like the fourth, fifth round. And that's lunacy. If you can get Keenan Allen in the fourth or fifth round, like that's, I don't know. I think that wins you leagues in some cases, Yeah,
I think Herbert is going to win a lot of people their leagues this year. And, he's going to take a step forward. Last year, obviously, he was a rookie. So if he gets any better than he was last year, that's going to be scary. And then, later in the draft, we can look for Mike Williams in that offense as well. I think he's going to be pretty strong. So, something to keep an eye out.
Nice. All right. So here we are, running backs. We got Chris Carson, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and James Robinson, who gets a little bump because of the ETN injury. Terry McLaurin for wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Robert Woods. I'm thinking wide receiver. I love CeeDee Lamb so much. Like, I just think he's going to have such a huge year this year. Chris Carson's one of those guys that, like, he's good, but I hate drafting Chris Carson. I just feel like he stinks. And like, he's one of those guys that, like, he's just not good. Like, he's like Josh Jacobs, but he's like worse than Josh Jacobs. I feel like he's not that good. They just give him the ball all the time. So he gets fantasy numbers, but he's like not actually a good running back. And it annoys me to have a guy like that on my team. So,
I agree.
I'm
right there with you. It feels like every year Chris Carson's supposed to be good, and then somehow magically isn't good.
Right.
And it's like we keep getting fooled every year.
And they don't get anyone else. I mean, they drafted Rashad Penny in the first round, I guess, but like, Jesus.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before we came on that like I haven't played in 2 years, or maybe it was when we were on. The last time Chris Carson was good, I was playing fantasy football.
There you go. See, look at that.
That probably says something about it. And just to throw my 2 cents in while I'm talking, Terry McLaurin, talk amongst yourselves.
I was going to say I would go McLaurin here. I think with Fitzpatrick kind of being the quarterback there, they obviously get an improvement from last year. It was obviously a mess, and they won specifically by defense the entire year. Who'd they have? Haskins for half the year, Taylor Heineke. I'm forgetting a guy probably too. I think with Fitzpatrick, and McLaurin's obviously had a stellar first 2 years in the league. I think this is a guy that's up there with like a Keenan Allen in terms of consistency. I really like Terry McLaurin. I think this is a good spot for him.
I agree.
Yeah. For me, it's truly a coin flip, McLaurin and CeeDee Lamb. I think both are going to be productive. McLaurin, I'll probably give the edge to, but I'm really excited. I 100% think we need to take a wide receiver here, one of those two. And, if it was my draft, I'd be okay with whatever. And then then I think the next couple rounds are going to be really fun with the running backs to see how that shapes up, because I think we take some dart throws. What round we're in? The third round?
We're in the third round right now.
Yeah. So like the 5th or 6th round running backs, I'm really curious to see, and I would love to get your guys' opinions on looking at the names of that 5th and 6th round.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And Dark Blue Gold mentions it here, right? He says he finds it hilarious how round 2 and 3 are somehow full of guys that people don't really want to draft, but have to, even though they're all decent players. But he's right. Like, the thing is that the 2nd and 3rd round is like some of those guys just aren't that good, and like they're fine. But to me, I feel like this is where you can run into problems where it's like, oh, the consensus says that this guy is good. If you don't think he's good, then don't draft him. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where, and Dale, it comes back to what you said. And I think that this is something that I try to keep in the back of my head all the time. Like, at the end of the day, you're doing it for fun. Like, you're not drafting guys that you're like, well, they're going to put up numbers, but I hate them, but I'll draft them anyways. Like, no, don't do that to yourself. If you don't like a guy, don't draft him. Like, you just, there's no need to do that, And so, if there's a guy like Chris Carson, if Chris Carson's on my board and it's the 3rd round and it's like, this is the best player on the board and you should draft him, I'm like, no, I'm not drafting him. Now it's the 5th round. Okay, fine. Like, at that point, I'll take a shot at him. But like, to me, it's all about value. And it's like, if I have to draft Chris Carson in the 3rd round, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not doing that. You're going to give me an extra 2 rounds and let me draft him in the 5th? Sure, fine. I got no problem with that. But I think that that's the big thing for me, is not necessarily the player, but the value of the pick is kind of the issue that I have,
Yeah, and I want to kind of reiterate something. I know I've said it a few times, talking about the next few rounds. Like, I've said that already. Like, we're only in the 3rd round. I've said it like 3 or 4 times already. But I really like to try to, play chess here and look for the next moves and figure out where the value is going to land. Because, there's times where, and, getting ahead of myself here, but, looking at the Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, debate.
Right.
Samuel's going a couple rounds ahead or a couple rounds after Ayuk. So, if you're trying to look ahead and saying, man, I can get Deebo 2 rounds later, then you might pass on Ayuk because you don't want both of them, and Deebo might be the better value. But if Deebo goes 1 pick after Ayuk, then it's a different story. So I kind of like to play chess that way and try to predict what's going on.
Yeah. All right. So we took Terry McLaurin here, and we are back at 4-8. Ooh, Josh Allen just won. So in between, Kittle went, Montgomery, Chris Carson, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Josh Jacobs, Cooper Kupp, Julio, which someone mentioned before, who I think is an interesting guy this year because for the first time ever, he's not like the number 1 target. And so, like, it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do in that offense. I know he's not necessarily as healthy as he's never really healthy, but I don't know how healthy he necessarily is. But it's going to be interesting to see what he does in that lineup this year. So down in Tennessee, Godwin.
I'd be curious too. And obviously, I don't think we have an RB2 here, right?
Maybe we might.
So here's my, what do you think when you're kind of scarce on running backs, right? If you don't really like the value there, but you have a quarterback that might be able to get you some, right? Like a Kyler Murray. Obviously, Josh Allen went. Obviously know he can make plays with his legs. A Lamar, someone like that. Do you kind of lean towards getting a top 3 quarterback in like a Kyler Murray who's going to chip in 800-900 yards and 5 to 6 rushing touchdowns, where he can kind of bring you that value to that RB1 RB2 slot while also solidifying a top 3 quarterback?
Yes. Pick him. As Pat was talking, I was like, is this too early for a quarterback? Just like internal thoughts. And then I
tend to take him between 4, 5, 6, try to get a top 5 guy.
Right. I'm always an early I always think early quarterback, get one of the best guys. And I think Kyler Murray, like with the weapons that he's going to have this year, I don't think he's going to have to be Superman to rack up points. Like he's going to have to, he's got guys where he can dump the ball off and they'll go get him points. You know what I'm saying? Like guys like Rondale Moore and stuff like that, even young guys in that offense. I think it's a good spot to kind of nab him before, who knows, if you wait on a quarterback, you might not get anybody in the top 5, top 6.
So it's funny that you just said that, because I don't know if you can see the bottom right hand of the screen. It says there are 2 pick insights from, this is Fantasy Pros that we're drafting on. And it said 3 teams need a starting quarterback before your next pick. And there are 2 quarterbacks left in tier 1, which is Kyler and Lamar. So essentially what they're saying is that if you don't draft a quarterback in this spot, now it's a mock draft, so it's done by the computer. So they're saying if you don't draft a quarterback here, if you don't draft Kyler or Lamar, you're not getting Kyler or Lamar. 100% not going to happen, right? And you can look at your draft, and I think that that's a good way to do it, is kind of look at, who's in between where I'm picking, right? Are those guys, is someone going to be drafting a quarterback there? If there's one guy that needs a quarterback in between your 2 picks, well, you don't have to take a quarterback here because one of those guys is going to be available for you when he comes back. But if there's 3 or 4 guys in between, we're looking at it saying, well, I don't know if I can necessarily decide between Kyler and Lamar, but I might have to in this point, right? So if there's only one guy, then you don't have to. You let the one guy take the quarterback if he wants him, and then you take the other guy, So I think it's a good point. I mean, I think it's interesting. It's early. It's a little bit earlier than I like for a quarterback, but Kyler, man, if Kyler doesn't have an absolute monster year this year, like I just don't know. I just don't know what else to do.
Kyler Murray will have a monster year. For me, he's in the first tier. There's only 3 guys in that first tier of quarterbacks for me. That's Mahomes, Allen, and Kyler. I feel like it's a little too early for Kyler, and I'll tell you why. Looking at the guys available, I think I'd rather have, and Pat, if you want me to go on my rant about James Robinson, I can, but maybe I'll save it for another day. But I'd rather have, James Robinson or DJ Moore right now and get somebody like, probably 4 rounds later, you can get, Justin Herbert, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, I bet, in a few rounds, unless there's a crazy quarterback run. You never know. But I highly suggest scrapping the quarterback talk. I think it's a little too early. James Robinson is a much better value at this point, or DJ Moore. I'd be okay with either one. I think we only have 1 running back right now, right?
1 running back and 1 wide receiver. That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So for me, I think James Robinson is a steal right now. Maybe the computer's still going off ADP. Hasn't really adjusted since
I'm sure they are,
Etienne injury. So,
well, and it's interesting too. I mean, the other part for me is that I think you also have to take into account the scoring, right? If you're getting a bonus for rushing first downs, and there's a large bonus for rushing yards or rushing touchdowns or whatever the case may be, like that may sway you a little bit more towards a guy like Kyler or Lamar because they do run so much as a quarterback. But I think just straight up quarterback, I'm hesitant to go quarterback early. I'm this kind of the same way. But this is what I want to talk about with Kyle Pitts. Maybe we could talk. Let's save the Kyle Pitts conversation for next round, because I think maybe Pitts goes, maybe he doesn't. Either way, let's save that conversation for next round, because that's I'm interested. I want to talk about him. Are we okay drafting James Robinson here?
I'm all for it.
Okay.
The top guys that are available, there's one guy that we're looking at on the screen. If you guys are watching on the screen, there's one guy here that has 100% or a 0% chance of losing his job, losing his starting RB1 job, and that's James Robinson. DeAndre Swift, we don't know. Jamal Williams is there, and then Miles Sanders. I don't know who likes Miles Sanders.
It's a mess in Philadelphia.
He's so out of the guys available, James Robinson. I'm not saying he's a lock for 1 million fantasy points, but he definitely has the best outlook for not getting his job stolen from him.
All right, it's a good point. You guys okay with that? Spags,
I agree.
I hope so, because we're doing it.
I agree. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, let's do it. All right, so now let's see where the quarterbacks go. I'm interested in the Kyle Pitts conversation, right? So Kyle Pitts for me is a guy. He's really interesting to me because he's not necessarily a prototypical tight end. He's more of a receiver than he is a tight end, but still, arguably the best rookie season ever by a tight end was Gronk in 2010. Put up 10 touchdowns, finished as the number 5 overall tight end in fantasy that year. But the thing is that was slanted, right? He had a rough start of the year, and I think he had 2 or 3 games. I know he had the one game against Buffalo where he caught 3 touchdowns, and he had another game where he caught 2 touchdowns. Like it wasn't like he was going 8 for 95 and 2 touchdowns every week. That wasn't what he was doing. He would have like 2 catches for 25 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like he just, even though he had a great year and he finishes a top 5 tight end, he still didn't have. Obviously next year he had the most unbelievable season ever. But he
had 42 catches for 546 yards and 10 touchdowns. Right. So
it's crazy.
Which is good.
Help, but you take half that away, no one's really talking about it.
Right. Exactly. And so that's the thing. And I'm not saying Pitts can't do it. I'm not saying he can't have an unbelievable year and finish as a top 5 guy and blow everyone out of the water. But it's just like, are we confident that he can? Like if we're drafting him in the 5th round to be our tight end 1, it's just, I don't know. That's tough for me. That's a tough decision for me.
Yeah.
When did Aaron Hernandez get drafted?
Same year, 2010.
See, that's the thing. He also had Aaron Hernandez helping him out,
and Wes Welker,
that
Randy Moss.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it was a heck of a team, but I don't think all the same things that were there for Gronk are there for Kyle Pitts. I like Pitts. I think he's got talent. I don't know if he's going to be what everybody's hoping he is.
Right. I think on the other side of that too, just on Pat's argument, even though Gronk is the greatest tight end of all time and that season was amazing, they're 2 completely different tight ends. Like Kyle Pitts isn't going to have 42 catches for 500 yards. He'll have 42 catches for like 750, 800. Right. Like he's going to be used completely differently than
yes.
It's 10 years later and he's a different breed of human. Right. So I think that kind of, you take a little bit of that out of there, and just with the offense that they're going to run, because they stretch the field. They have for like 10 years now. That's just what they do. They don't really run the ball a ton. And with Calvin Ridley, like they're going to go and they're going to kind of air it out a little bit. So I think he's good value. And Pat, I took him pretty high in our keeper league, but that's also based off of what I think he can do in the future. Right. So I think I'm a little bit higher on him than you guys, but definitely like right now, probably no, it is too early for me.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Okay. So right now, who are the tight ends available? Kyle Pitts and
tight ends available.
Did Kittle
already been taken. So it's Pitts, Mark Andrews, Logan Thomas.
All right. So instead of I don't know, just for the sake of argument, when we drafted Darren Waller, who would give me a couple of picks after Waller? Can you score?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of picks after Waller were Joe Mixon, CEH, Mahomes, J.K. Dobbins, DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson.
Say we got Keenan Allen there, right? Because we wanted a wide receiver. So say we got Keenan Allen instead of Waller.
Yep.
So we can have Keenan Allen and then Pitts. Would you rather have Keenan Allen and Pitts now, or Waller and say Brandon Ayuk or
T. Higgins or
one of those guys?
Right.
I think. And that's a tough decision. I think I'd rather have Keenan Allen and somebody like Keenan Allen and Pitts than Waller and then say Ayuk.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So which is possible. And
But
this is, and I think, and you mentioned it before, like this is why it's good to mock draft, because you can kind of see how things work out. And if you have something like I use to do my mock drafts, I do the Draft Dominator through Football Guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with them is that you can plug in all of your settings. You can plug in, if you have keepers, you can plug in the keepers that you have and stuff. And then you can go through the mock, with the value-based drafting, kind of draft that way. And you can look at it and see, okay, this is how that draft could shake out. And of course, like once the draft starts and you're dealing with actual people, things can go totally different ways. But you can look at it that way and say, yeah, if I took Pitts in the 5th round instead, and I took Keenan Allen early, then I can take Pitts in the 4th, whatever the case may be, right? And then maybe someone's like, oh, screw it, I'm going to draft Pitts in the 3rd round, and then it gets thrown off. But but at least you kind of have those different strategies. So mock drafting, I think, is super important. So, but all right, so let's get into what we're going to do here. We have just so people know what we have here, okay? So our roster right now is Derrick Henry, James Robinson, Terry McLaurin, and Darren Waller. So we have 2 running backs, 1 wide receiver, and then obviously we only need 1 tight end. There is 2 flexes in this league. I just put 2 flexes in this league because I figured, what the heck. So I'm assuming we probably want another wide receiver. Sometimes I'm tempted to go running back, even though I already have 2. But Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin, Javonte Williams, and Chase Edmonds. Like, I don't love any of those guys. Mike Williams is fine, but Mike Davis, is fine, but I'm certainly not taking him over someone like Ayuk or T. Higgins. So, although, sometimes I would draft a running back and have a 3rd running back instead of drafting a 2nd wide receiver, depending on who's there, I'm certainly not doing that in this case, because I feel like the wide receivers are significantly, in my opinion at least, are better than the running backs.
Yeah, this draft would look 100% different to me if Ayuk and Higgins were taken. I would be psyched to get Mike Davis, Mike Davis or
Myles Gaskin or
Myles Gaskin, or any 3 of those guys. I would be super excited about if Ayuk and man, I have a horrible short-term memory. I already forget.
That's
Ayuk or
T. Higgins.
T. Higgins. Yeah. So
now Lamar is also here as well. So we could theoretically take Lamar in the 5th round, but again, like we talked about, I feel like I'm okay waiting at quarterback, because we could get Dak Prescott, we could get Aaron Rodgers, we could get, Joe Burrow, we could get Justin Herbert, we can get guys like that a lot later. But again, and this is, we keep saying fun, but again, like if you love Lamar Jackson and you're in the 5th round, then take him. Like you're not reaching that much. I don't think my draft strategy and some of the draft strategies that some of us have may not align with that, but that doesn't matter. Like if that's your guy and you think he's going to have a monster year again, then draft him. Like whatever, dude, like I think that's, should you be drafting Lamar Jackson early in the 1st round? No. But if you're in the 5th round and that's the guy that you like a lot, you can absolutely justify that pick here. Like it's an easy choice to make that pick if that's what you want. So, I think don't overthink it on things like that. If that's your guy, go get him, but we'll see. Oh, Dark Blue Gold does notice your bird cage.
It's a sick chair. They're cheap. I don't know where they got it, but it's awesome. You could put lights over it for Halloween. 10 out of 10.
That's
pretty
a
cool
dope chair.
That chair is, and I'm not judging anybody's lifestyle, but it definitely looks like it would be like in a swinger's house. Like that's the type of chair that swingers have.
This is 1,000% like it was bought from the outdoor section at Home Depot. This is my cousin's home. It's a wonderful chair.
I like it. Hey, I'm not judging.
To throw it in the living room. I think it's great.
That's great. All right, so what are we gonna do? Do you want to do Spags? I'm gonna let you choose here. Do you
Brandon Ayuk.
Ayuk. Let's do it.
Yes,
all right,
love him.
So I love Higgins too. I think Jamar Chase, people have been going nuts about Jamar Chase. I think T. Higgins is going to have a monster year, probably a bigger year than Jamar Chase. But I love Ayuk too. I mean, he's just going to get fed the ball in San Francisco. So I'm down with it.
I'm excited about San Francisco. I'm excited about that offense.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think that, what's his name will be, oh man, someone reached up and snagged him. I was hoping he'd last, but he didn't. I was hoping for our Patriots fans out there that Damian Harris lasted, but he did not. Got taken in the first pick of the 6th round. because this is kind of my spot with Harris, and this is the hard thing for me. I think Harris is a value this year. By the way, T. Higgins is still available, but I think Harris is a value this year that a lot of people aren't really realizing. Harris is going to be the number one wide receiver. Like, he's going to be the number one running back in New England, right? It's going to happen. Like, he's going to get a ton of yards. He's going to score a ton of touchdowns. Like, it's going to happen this year. I think that people are overlooking that thing, and I think for me, you can jump at that value. Now, the issue is we're in New England. No one's overlooking that value in New England because we're Patriots fans, and so. But if you're dealing with out-of-state people, or you're dealing with people that, that aren't necessarily, loving the Patriots or aren't paying attention to the Patriots a lot, and they're looking at it saying it's a mess, which it usually is, I don't think it's going to be this year. I think Damian Harris is going to be the featured number one back, and he's going to rush for, 1,200 yards and score 10 to 12 touchdowns. Like, I think I'm penciling that in right now. And so to me, I think if you can get him in the 6th, 7th, 8th round, I love that value.
The only risk there, Pat, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been burned by a fumble by Pat's running back in the first quarter, and then you don't see him. You never see him again.
Stephen Ridley's career ended on a fumble. It just disappeared.
Yeah.
So he had 300 yards at one game or whatever, and then we didn't hear from him again.
That was Jonas Gray you're thinking of. Gray.
Yeah. That's right.
That was an alarm clock situation. It could be anything. It helps your point. Like, he could sneeze in the meeting room, and then that's it. He's done.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, in real life, if I was a Pats fan, I would be super excited about Damian Harris. I do think he has it, but for fantasy, giving such a big piece of my draft capital up, I'm a little nervous, man.
Yeah.
I'll say this real quick, just from a Patriots point of view. Like, you're one Rams running back injury away from Sony Michel being out of the picture, right? Like, he could be traded at any moment at this point. And the only other guy that could take over those carries is a rookie, and they'd never do that. So, like, I think the next week is kind of a big thing, because I don't think it's likely Sony gets traded, but you never know.
Neither do I. I think Bill is starting to change too, which makes me think, and I don't want to put this in writing, obviously, but I think if there was a rookie running back that wasn't a first round pick that was going to play this year, I think it's Stevenson, because I do think Bill is adapting a little bit more and starting to play younger guys earlier than he would have in the past. Obviously, take the first round, like I said, out of the question with Maroney and Michel. But yeah, like you said, even if Michel was moved, I think even with or without him, Stevenson has a role. I love Damian Harris, right? I took him in the 6th round the other night. I think I'm believing in that stock. I think he really turned it on towards the end of last year, and I think it's going to be a run-heavy team, and he's their RB1. But I still think Michel and even Stevenson may be able to take some carries away from him.
I just think he's so much more talented than the guys that they've had in the past, right? And Dark Blue goes talking about Gillislee in 2017. And listen, I agree, but Mike Gillislee wasn't that good. You know what I mean? Like, he was fine, but he wasn't that good, right? Yeah. Like, you're talking about a stud, like a certified stud with Damian Harris, where he's like your guy. Now, yeah, sure, something could happen, and they could fall out of love with him for whatever reason. I just don't think that's going to happen. And so I think here's my big thing, right? Is that, to me, it's about capitalizing. It's about capitalizing on value, right? To me, it's about capitalizing on value. I'm not taking Damian Harris in the 5th round, in the 4th round. I'm not doing that. But if I can get him in the 6th, 7th, 8th round, that's where you can start to capitalize on value, because he's a guy that's, I think, is going to be easily an RB2 that you're now getting in the 7th or 8th round. And it's like, that's a no-brainer right there for you. So that's where I kind of look at it and say, like, okay, you can start to kind of increase your value as opposed to decrease your value if you're reaching on players. So, and look, to me, that's the way I look at it, at least.
Sure. Yeah, there's value for everybody, right?
Right, exactly. So, all right, so here we are in the 6th round. We have 2 wide receivers. We have 2 running backs. We have a tight end. And I'm looking at wide receiver again. Look, running back is Trey Sermon, Mostert, Melvin Gordon, your boy Dale, and then Rojo, who I think Ronald Jones is a decent value too. I think it's a little early in the 6th round. T. Higgins, I think here makes a lot of sense. These top 3 guys, these top 3 wide receivers that are on the board right now, I love all 3 of them. T. Higgins, I think is gonna have a monster year. Juju's a guy that people like, oh, Juju stinks. And it's like, well, he had like 95 catches last year. Like, well, yeah, but he wasn't like the number one. I don't care if he's the number 1 or the number 3. That doesn't matter to me. If he's going to get 95 catches and like 11 touchdowns, I mean, and you're talking about I can get that guy in the 6th round as my 3rd wide receiver, that's an absolute no-brainer to me. And so, like, I love Juju for where he's being drafted. Jerry Jeudy's a guy who his quarterback situation sucks. I mean, it just sucks. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's Drew Lock or it's Teddy Bridgewater. Like, his quarterback situation is terrible. But, like, DeAndre Hopkins dominated with, like, the worst quarterbacks of all time throwing him the ball in Houston. Like, I just think Jeudy is that good that he can be that guy in Denver. And then if you're playing in a keeper league or, God forbid, a dynasty league, like, I'm taking that guy because Denver's going to have to figure out the quarterback situation at some point. And so draft a quarterback, right? I still can't believe they didn't take Fields at 9. I can't believe it. I know Surtain's looked great, but like, my God, dude, he's sitting right there at 9. You don't have to move and you just pass on him. I thought that was nuts. But either way, I love Jeudy. It's hard for me to justify taking him over T. Higgins, but I'm higher on Jerry Jeudy than a lot of people are.
Me too. I think that's a guy. I think there'll be improved quarterback play at that position. I think Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater is an upgrade over what they had last year. I know they had Lock, but he was kind of in and out of the lineup. First year as a full starter. I'm not a big Juju guy. I think that's a guy for if you're looking for 4 catches for 35 yards and a fire TikTok after the game. Have at it. But I'm all set with that on my team.
Look, there's a couple reasons I don't like Juju Smith. I've been burned by him in the past for sure. But other than that, the Steelers offense, how good do you think they're really going to be? I mean, we have an aging quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger who could, he could still throw, I guess, but he is getting older and way.
A lot of mouths to feed too, not to cut you off.
Well,
Deontay.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, how potent is this offense going to be? I mean, can they get Deontay Johnson's going to get his? He had the first, second, or third most targets in the NFL last year. Something crazy.
Who had number 1? That's a quiz question.
That is a good question. I don't know.
Nikoi Myers, 81.
Really?
Most in the league. Yep.
Wow, that's
only 58 catches, obviously, because of and he's yet to score a touchdown in his NFL career. Fun fact, but go on.
Awesome. That's crazy. So with Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool's emerging. We have Najee Harris. I mean, how many touchdowns are the Steelers going to score a game? I mean, Juju is going to be the one I think left out. I think Claypool is going to have a really good sophomore year, and then Deontay Johnson is going to keep dominating, and then Najee Harris is going to do his thing. Right. I think that's where it stops, man.
I mean, I think it makes sense. Listen, I understand what you guys are saying. He never had 100 yards receiving last year, but he had a lot of games with 6 to 9 catches. And so to me, I'm looking at it as a 0.5 PPR. He's going to get the ball, and scored 9 touchdowns or whatever. So, but I understand the point. Like, I'm not necessarily taking him early. And again, I'm not taking him over Jerry Jeudy and I'm not taking him over T. Higgins, but I think that he's being kind of pushed down a little bit more by some people, and I'm in there. So anyways. All right, so what do we want to do? You want to do T. Higgins here? I mean, we considered him last round. I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer at this point, right?
I don't think you can go wrong him or Jeudy here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You're banking on improved quarterback play. I know Burrow's been good, but was good before the injury, but a little skeptical there.
It's true. Keegan, Higgins or Jeudy?
Higgins.
All right. Done. I just want you to know if Jerry Jeudy's still there in the 7th round, we're taking it. I don't care if we have 4 wide receivers or not. Robbie Anderson.
Just signed an extension today.
Man, Devontae Smith, I think is insane to take him that early.
That's an aggressive pick.
Bro, look at this. He's sitting there. Jerry Jeudy's still in the 7th round. So just in between. So just so we see, Tyler Boyd, Robbie Anderson, Mark Andrews, Devontae Smith, Juju, Debo, Prescott, and then Russell Wilson. So to your point about Debo and Dale, to your point about Debo and Ayuk, we took Ayuk in the third round,
right?
And so now Debo goes to the top of the 7th round, and so yes, like Debo's a guy who had I think he had negative. Did he have negative yards downfield? Like as far as yards, like he had multiple games where like the depth of target was negative because he was getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah. But still,
I think it was 7 games last year. So it was outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. So Prescott just went, Russell Wilson just went. Those are guys I love this year, but you still have Aaron Rodgers, you still have Justin Herbert, you still have Ryan Tannehill. Like those guys are still available. They're still sitting there waiting for you. But if we want one of those guys, and again, this is one of those things where I like the fantasy pros because they tell us there are 5 teams that need to pick a starting quarterback before your next pick. There are 2 quarterbacks left in tier 2, which is Rodgers and Herbert. If we want one of those guys, now is the time to do it. I love Jerry Jeudy. I would pick him here probably anyways, but I mean, Aaron Rodgers sitting right here or Herbert, one of those guys is going to have a ridiculous year this year. And I even Brady's oh my God, dude, Brady, a guy, man, Brady's going to put up stupid numbers this year. So that's another guy where it's if you could draft Brady in the 8th or 9th round, I don't know. To me, it's a better value than taking a guy like Kyler in the 2nd round,
100%. I agree.
So what do you guys think? Do you want to go quarterback or do you want to go Spags? You were advocating for quarterback earlier. So would you like to go quarterback or do you want to go Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, I'd go quarterback here. I mean, it's hard to pass on the league MVP, right? Last year. Yeah. And I like the Packers this year just because I think I just think they kind of have that last dance mentality to them. They were posting it on their Instagram story. Obviously, Randall Cobb's back. They haven't had much turnover from last year, but Justin Herbert gives me a better Phillip Rivers vibe where he's going to throw 45 times a game. He's going to throw for 3,500 yards and 35 plus touchdowns. And obviously can make things happen with his legs. So I'm torn here. I'd probably lean Herbert, but I don't think you're wrong in any case between those two. I mean, Tannehill too, right? He's a top, sneaky top 5 quarterback every year.
Yep. Austin, what do you think?
I kind of want to be a part of the Aaron Rodgers revenge tour this year. So, I mean, I'm a round 9 or round 10 quarterback guy.
Yeah. But
being able to get him, if we're choosing between Rodgers and Jeudy, I would go Rodgers in a situation.
Makes sense. I'll tell you what, man. I was in Scott Fishbowl, and Scott Fishbowl, Spags' buddies are just roasting him in the comments right now. It's great.
They didn't win the league last year, so they can talk all they want.
But I was in the Scott Fishbowl, and it happened last month. And so last month, of course, there's all this uncertainty. Is he going to retire? Is he going to come back? Is he not going to come back? And it's one of those interesting situations where people they weren't drafting him, and it's a super flex league, so you can start 2 quarterbacks. I drafted him at the end of the 2nd round in a league like that. People were drafting him at the end of the 3rd round. I couldn't believe it. It was just the guy is an absolute monster. And so I would be down for Aaron Rodgers here. I'd be down for Herbert here as well. I know, Dale, you talked about Herbert earlier. Would you still pass? I think we're going to take quarterback here, but before I let you choose the quarterback, would you still pass on quarterback and go somewhere else, or are you taking quarterback here in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, let me see the list of running backs really quick. I don't think there's any decent running backs.
It's garbage. It's Trey Sermon, Mostert, right. Gordon, and Ronald Jones.
All right. That's not trash, man. Don't call Melvin Gordon.
No, I know. Well, you know what? I'm actually pretty high on Ronald Jones this year, but he's like an RB3, which I guess you'd be drafting him as an RB3 in this situation.
Right.
But
I think, and then what wide receivers?
Jeudy, Cooks, Shark, and Will Fuller. Okay. Dude, Brandon Cooks
goes over 1,000 yards every year. I mean, people sleep on his quarterbacks too. He's played with Brady, Breeze, Deshaun Watson for a year, and then obviously he did have Goff for a year. But it's hard to find another receiver of our generation who's had those that been on that many teams with that many good quarterbacks. And when he had Goff was, they made it to the Super Bowl that year. So
Yeah. In this instance, I'm 100% okay with Aaron Rodgers. I think Austin, the revenge tour, I think he's going to throw it as much as he can. I think him and Devontae Adams are going to be like setting records. I think they're going to go, Brady Moss type year this year. So, I love Aaron Rodgers. I like him. I would normally pass, I think, but because of the crappy, I think you can get Aaron Rodgers now, and then if you guys let me get Melvin Gordon next round, I think he's going to be there. I think that'd be awesome.
Jesus Christ!
So I'm bargaining here. So yes.
So let's take Rodgers here. I'm down with that, and then and let's see what happens in the 8th round. I'm just telling you, if Jerry Jeudy somehow lasts the 8th round, that's the pick. Okay, just so you know, it's not going to happen because he's going to go like the next pick. But yeah, there he is, 7-7. But yeah, Herbert. So and it's good because you can see the run of quarterbacks that just went. So in between our pick and this pick right here, so we took Rodgers. By the way, the 2 picks before us quarterback, so it was Dak, Wilson, and then we took Rodgers, and then Burrow, Herbert, Stafford, and Jalen Hurts all went in between those 2 picks. Michael Carter got taken before Troy Sermon. I don't know what's going on, but again, they're just using ADP, so they're not necessarily looking at anything. So okay, so running back we have Zach Moss, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, and Kenyon Drake. Like no thanks, I'm good.
Wait, Melvin Gordon was drafted.
Melvin Gordon already taken. Got taken the pick before us.
Before us.
Got sniped. So this is, I've found myself doing this like in a lot of drafts that I've had and mock drafts that I've done, is just completely punting on the running back position outside of the first few rounds. Like if I get past like round 5, I'm not taking a running back in between like rounds 5 and like 10 because I just feel like all those guys in there like stink. Like they're just not like, why am I drafting Zach Moss in the 8th round? Like I'm not doing that. Like I know Buffalo has a chance to be good and blah, 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 whatever, but I'm like looking at Zach Moss. I'm like, he stinks. Like he's not good. I'm drafting James Conner in the 8th round. I'm not doing that. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Leonard Fournette was terrible last year with Tampa. Like, Kenyon Drake is going to spell Josh Jacobs, but I'm not like, those are guys, if you want to give them to me in the 10th, 11th round, sure. But I'm not taking them in the 8th round. That to me is, those guys are guys that I don't like. So I'm just passing. I've just found myself passing on running back consistently in that kind of middle rounds at like round 5 to 10. You know what I mean?
Yep. And it just, I know, whatever. Melvin Gordon, let me just say, that was probably the steal of the mock draft so far. And you guys don't realize a top 12 running back last year. A lot of people slept on. I understand he doesn't have huge rushing yard numbers. He's hit 1,000 yards once, but he hasn't really played full seasons either.
Melvin's a waiver wire pickup in my league. I might have to grab him.
It's crazy. I mean, the dude in the last 4 seasons.
Javonte Williams will be that Cam Akers of last year because it kind of seems like, he'll eventually take that role, but it might take, 6-7 weeks. I mean, I know Gordon's hurt right now too, so.
I think you're going to get a good half season of Melvin Gordon, and I like to think maybe a little bit more. Like I said, I mean, look at the last 4 seasons of Melvin Gordon: 8 touchdowns, 10, 8, and 9, and people are still sleeping on him. It's like he hasn't slowed down. He had almost 1,000 yards last year.
Right.
This offense maybe is a little bit better than it was last year. I don't know. I guess that's debatable, but I think Melvin Gordon's a steal that late to get him. I mean, we could have gotten him as what our third running back, right?
Third running back, yeah.
Yeah, yep. I mean that's crazy. So that's just for people later. Yeah.
All right, so I think Brandon Cooks is the pick here for me at least. So I know we're in the 8th round. We'd have 4 wide receivers, but like to me, I just think at this point, I just think you're drafting the best player available. I think Brandon Cook is the best player available in the best spot. Will Fuller, he could be fine, but there's questions about Tua. How's Tua going to be? No.
Tua can't
Yeah.
We talked about yards per route run by Deebo Samuel. Like Will Fuller's is 60. Like that guy just sprints down the field. Tua's not getting him the ball. It's just right. He's gonna have 30 catches tops this year. I think that's a horrible fantasy value. Just my 2 cents.
I mean, to me, right here, the play is either Brandon Cooks or Jarvis Landry.
Yeah,
I would even
Landry makes
think
sense.
About Fuller.
I'm going to throw a huge wrench in this conversation. Somebody that we're not talking about, but I think should be drafted around here. And maybe by draft day, a lot of people listening or watching will see his draft day value climb, and that's Laviska Shenault. He's going to be a top 30 wide receiver, and he's definitely not drafted like it at this moment. Laviska Shenault, with Etienne's injury, Urban Meyer's coaching style, we're kind of guessing at this point, but we think that he's going to be used a lot in the backfield, quick passes, stuff like that. Chenault's going to be, I think, one of the main beneficiaries of Travis Etienne going down. I love Shenault here, and I think this is probably where he should be drafted.
And so that's
he
definitely
played a little running back last year too, right? Didn't he?
He had a few carries. Yeah, he had a few carries. I mean, 2, 3, 4 carries a game. He can definitely, and maybe he will. But I look at him like a poor man's Percy Harvin.
I love that you brought him up, because Darrell Bevel's their offensive coordinator, so they're not going to do everything that Urban Meyer did in college. But if you look at kind of those teams he ran, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, they were all receivers who played. They were basically running backs who played receiver, right? Like they got the ball out of the backfield. Third down, you knew who they were going to. Like, I think he's going to play that exact role, and whatever offense they end up running, he's going to play that role. I think that was a great call by you.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. So let's take Laviska here, and then we'll get to the 9th round. I also want to hear some deep sleep, because we're over an hour already here. I'm not gonna keep going, but I do want to hear some kind of deep sleeper, some guys that you're targeting in the 10th round plus for you guys. Darnell Mooney just went. Mike Williams, who you talked about, just went as well. But Dale, just a few, I'll let Dale, you go first, and then I'll have Austin go after you. But just a few guys that you're targeting kind of later in drafts that you think are being undervalued right now, or could be better than what some people are seeing right now.
Give me a second. I wasn't really ready for that, man.
Sorry about that.
Sleepers. Are you talking about like deep, like late in the?
Just anyone that you're targeting in like the 10th round or later, that either you think should be valued higher, that you think is a good value, or guys that you're kind of just taking a shot at that you think will have a good example. So Dark Blue Gold brings up someone. I'll just give you an example. Jonnu Smith's a guy for me that, like, I just think Jonnu's going to get the ball over and over and over and over and over again in this New England offense. Like, he's going to run the ball. They're going to throw it to him a ton. Like, he's going to be kind of that main factor in the offense. So I just feel like that he's going to be a guy that's undervalued. Like, he's going as like the tight end, like, 13, 14, 15 right now in drafts. Mm-hmm. And I think he's easily going to finish the tight end one. And I said it to you before, and you tweeted it out for me, like, through the ESF account. Like, I think they're both going to finish, him and Henry are both going to finish as tight end ones. In other words, top 12 tight ends. If you're drafting either of those guys in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, like, those are guys that that have some value for you, I think, late, Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you a couple. Jamal Williams, the running back for the Detroit Lions. I understand Swift is there, but I think Jamal Williams, we saw what he did in Green Bay. I think he'll be just as involved, maybe even more in Detroit. So I think that's a late round guy you can get.
I like it.
Yeah. Who else? Mike Williams. I mean, we already mentioned. I think that's kind of a late round guy. Pretty solid. I know, it's kind of, a lot of people are talking about, I think, the buzz Mooney on the Bears. I think I
love that pick.
He's a late guy that I think you can get at a really good value.
Yeah. And the guy
Debo,
here on the screen too.
I know Debo's not. Sorry, I know Debo's not a deep guy, but I think a lot of people are sleeping on him too. And he could be just as involved as Ayuk.
I'm curious too about what you think about the rookie quarterbacks this year, because I think, aside from Lawrence and Wilson, I don't think the other three are guaranteed to start the year, right? Lance, they're obviously like Fields in Chicago and Cam in New England. They're sold on their veteran guy and kind of ease them in. But you could also see a situation like Justin Herbert last year, where he comes in obviously an unfortunate situation with Tyrod Taylor, but comes in and takes the league by storm. Is that a guy like Justin Fields, would you take him before a guy like Lawrence or Wilson because he's probably in a little bit of a better situation?
I am not taking Trevor Lawrence unless he's handed to me on a platter.
Yeah.
That team screams run heavy. I'm pretty sure Urban Meyer said it, and I don't see it happening. I don't see Trevor Lawrence. I'm not saying he'll be a bad quarterback. I think for regular football, Lawrence is going to be great. But for fantasy football, he could be a complete turd in a punch bowl.
I also think that team stinks.
Oh, well, yeah, that too.
You
but
know?
Yeah.
Look, the team stinks. Trevor Lawrence, we saw what Joe Burrow did as a rookie last year. The Bengals aren't that good of a team, but you let a quarterback throw it 50 times, and he's going to produce for you, right?
Hey, where was he at the end of the season? Because I'm pretty sure he was at home. He was at home rehabbing.
But when he was playing, of course, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I'm writing an article. I'm writing an article right now for the website called 32 Questions.
Okay.
And my question for the Bengals is why the F do you hate Joe Burrow? Because they had a chance to fix the offensive line, they didn't.
Right.
They went out here and got him a receiver. So he's going to have a lot of targets.
Apparently he wanted Chase, right?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just think it's a stupid decision. He is not the Joe Burrow
you're not
has
wrong.
talent. No, Joe Burrow has talent, but he shouldn't be the guy picking the pieces on the field.
Right.
When somebody should have said, "Hey, little man, sit down. We're going to get you an offensive lineman, and we're going to protect you."
Yeah.
Because I just think that he's going to get hung out to dry again. It drives me nuts.
The best rookie quarterback this year, and I think it's going to be by a landslide, is Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance will end up starting and take the league by storm.
I think he'll be the worst of the 5 picked.
Really?
I think
I'm not a Trey Lance guy. Never really was.
Man, that team is set up for him, though, man.
It is, right? But I think, Mac in New England too, right? But obviously Patriots guys are never popular fantasy players just because it's kind of a week-to-week kind of game plan. But
Definitely.
Yeah, I think, fantasy, I like Fields in terms of fantasy just because I think he can do a lot with his legs too. And I think he's a guy that we had as a quarterback too coming out. Me and Keegan obviously do a lot of the draft stuff for Pat's Pulpit. I love his game. I don't like the fit with Matt Nagy, but the athleticism is certainly there.
Yeah,
he won't have to deal with
Matt
Nagy for very long.
That is not Dale. That is not Dale. That is John Chapman in a Dale suit.
Look, I talk to John Chapman a lot, and he's a big nice guy. So maybe maybe he's
a guy.
Yeah, I mean, I just spent a weekend with him, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, but I really do like Trey Lance a lot. I mean, I've Lance a lot.
I think Fields is better, and the longer Dalton sits out there on the field and Fields gets to hold the clipboard.
Yeah.
And watch and learn, I think the better off he's going to be.
Yeah.
All this really doesn't matter. In redraft, you're not drafting any of the rookie quarterbacks. There's a million other quarterbacks you're going to take before any of these rookies. So
yeah,
I agree. Yeah. I agree on that. I mean, listen, unless you want to just punt on quarterback completely and then draft one in like the last round or something like that, then maybe you're drafting one of these guys, or maybe you're drafting, them as your QB2. You've already drafted a quarterback and you're drafting one of them late as your second quarterback. Fine. I'm okay with that. But if you're relying on a rookie quarterback as your only quarterback in a redraft league, things are not going to end well for you. So, but we'll see. One of these guys here that I want to talk about, Michael Pittman, I think is another guy that is being slept on a little bit. He's a guy who, obviously going into his second year, hopefully better quarterback play in Indianapolis this year. With Carson Wentz, I think second year in the offense. T.Y. Hilton's kind of up and down. He's a little bit older now. I think he has a real chance to be, kind of step into that wide receiver one role. But what are you going to do? So anyways, anyone else you guys want to add? Keegan, Spags, Austin Dale, anyone else you guys want to add kind of as late round sleepers or anything like that?
I've got one guy. I don't quite know if it's a sleeper thing, but it's somebody I'm higher on than everybody else. Robert Tanyan, I think, is going to have a great year for Green Bay. I think he's really their, other than Aaron Jones and Devontae Smith, I think he's the number 3 guy, even with Randall Cobb coming in. And down in the red zone, which I think they're going to be in the red zone a lot. I don't think they're going to have many explosive plays, but that's where they're going to have to score from. He's going to be a really good target for Aaron Rodgers. So I really like him. I tried to nab him as my second tight end in our league, and I got sniped right before my pick. But I really, really like him.
I do too. I agree.
I like it. That's another one. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Nikoi Myers. Myers is going insanely late in drafts. He is the number one wide receiver in New England. Don't listen to what anyone else tells you. He's the number one wide receiver in New England.
He's going to have 80 catches.
Led the league in targets last year too. And that's a guy that they rely heavily on their slot. We saw it years with Edelman, Welker. A lot of people think it'll be Kendrick Bourne. I think it's Jacoby Myers' job. I think with the amount of times they'll have two tight ends on the field too, they'll have Bourne out. Bourne's probably going to play a lot of Z for them.
Right.
So I think Myers too. He's continuously gotten better as his career's gone on, and you might see him start to scratch the surface of the potential he has.
And don't forget Russell Gage either. I'm sorry, just jump in. I forgot that is one of my guys.
And with Myers, just real quick on the slot thing, like they wrote slot on his forehead in Sharpie. Like Troy Brown has not backed down at all. He's like, yeah, he's a great slot receiver. He's going to be just as good as I was. Like he has no problem admitting that. And I think that's half the battle with the Patriots, figuring out what the hell people are going to be doing for them. And like he's going to be their slot receiver.
It's a good point. All right, gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate you guys coming on. Before you leave, we went long today. We usually don't go over an hour. We went long today. But before you leave, I want you to guys just, plug yourself, let us know where they can read you, see you, hear you, everything else. So, just let us know. So Dale, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Austin and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Like I said, we host a fantasy football podcast, Eat Sleep Fantasy. You find us on iTunes or wherever you download podcasts, YouTube, Eat Sleep Fantasy, on Twitter, Eat Sleep FF, pretty much everywhere. Just type in Eat Sleep Fantasy, you'll find us.
I like it.
Yeah, I write and I'm the de facto editor for Eat Sleep Fantasy, and you can find me on Twitter at Austin Wrote That.
Love it. Austin and I are also in a Marvel group chat. Big day, Big day yesterday.
It was huge. Yeah,
Marvel group
Spider-Man
chat.
Far From Home.
Yes,
a bunch of nerds are you?
Yeah,
the Sinister Six, baby.
Oh, it's gonna be so good.
Can't wait.
We can. Yeah, you guys can keep that in the. I'm not.
That's right, Dale.
No
Spags is right with
Dale.
you. He has no interest.
No idea. No interest. Sorry.
Beat you up.
Dale hates all things nerdy.
When we go to Houston, we're not going out. We're not even going to go to the Patriots game. We're just going to watch Marvel movies with Spags for 2 days straight.
Listen, when quarantine started, I know we're still recording. When quarantine started, I pitched the idea to Spags. Let's do a podcast where we review the Marvel movies. He watched them for the first time, and me being the expert, and we talk about the movies together. And he was like, "No chance."
Yeah, no
I was
way.
like, "All right, I tried."
I'd rather study the draft and do that till my eyes bleed than do it. All right,
Why
Pat.
not both,
I love you.
Spags?
All right, listen, that's it. We appreciate you guys coming. Thanks a lot, Dale, Austin. Thank you so much, everyone out there listening. We appreciate it, and we will we'll talk to you Sunday night after the Patriots' third and final preseason game.
Guys,
Thanks for having me.